All right, so a very warm welcome to everyone here on behalf of TIE DC and the TIE DC board. Want to welcome you all for those who have braved the rain and the weather conditions. This is being recorded and streamed to over 250 registrants who are currently watching from all the TIE chapters globally. Welcome to everyone online too. With that, I can definitely see a lot of new faces here who either are new to TIE DC or GovCon. Maybe I'll take a few minutes to give a background of who we are, what we do. As many of you know, TIE is headquartered in Silicon Valley. It started about 30 years back. And the spirit of TIE is always in giving back. So that's when the whole movement started, when successful entrepreneurs wanted to come in and give back to the first-time entrepreneurs. And that got so viral that now today we are in over 60 chapters globally, 22 chapters only in the US, maybe 13,000 members, or just I think we are adding more as we speak, and with more than 3,000 charter members with a singular focus of giving back to the first-time entrepreneurs. That's the spirit. And the impact that TIE has created, to just give you an example, if you take the top maybe 20 companies that got funded, that went IPO, almost every single of them, you can trace them back to a chapter. You can trace them back to maybe a member who invested in them or mentored or coached or advised. So that's the impact that TIE brings together. Now coming to TIE DC itself, it's got a lot of history. It used to be called the C Club, founded by most of you may know Reggie Agarwal of Cvent, which is a big company from this area, and Sanju Bansal of MicroStrategy. So this was again in early 2000s when it used to be called the C Club, but they were trying to do the same kind of things, and that's when C Club merged with TIE and became the TIE DC chapter. So ever since we've had some great leaders here. Just to name a few in no particular order, we had Sudhakar Keshavan of ICF. He was the president of this chapter. We had Satya Akula, we had Hemant Kanakia, we had P.V. Bokasam, we have Anish Chopra, who used to be the Obama admin, Vivek Kundra, and the list goes on and on. Most recently, Smita Siddhanti and Manish Malhotra. And I'm really, really privileged to have worked and come in and fill in their shoes here. So with that, I wanted to take a few minutes in telling what TIE DC is all about. So while the spirit of mentoring, networking is all there, we said, how can we multiply the impact in the DMV area? And that's when we started focusing on these pillars. The first one being GovCon. As you know, the uniqueness about the TIE, the other slide. The uniqueness about TIE DC is, because we are all GovCon members here, we wanted to give a big focus in terms of helping small businesses grow, and more importantly, bring in the umbrella of TIE's expertise from Silicon Valley and Seattle and bringing innovation into the Beltway. So this conference is all about GovCon, where we have done a lot of things. Thanks to Pallabi, thanks to Manish, who've been leading this effort this year. We also then have the focus on angel investment, because unless you mentor and coach these first-time entrepreneurs, not with money, but with real things, and that's when we started this a few years back, and headed by Rajesh Rai and Frank Bonsal, who are the VCs on our board. We made close to 4 or 5 investments this year, partnering with CIT, partnering with TEDco, and that's the impact that we try to bring about. Like companies like Oxyware, companies like Kasha, are all investments from this ecosystem. The third, we do have a big focus on women and minority races. So we have an entire committee here focused on helping women entrepreneurs, helping first-time minority race entrepreneurs to succeed. And the diversity and inclusivity is all about that. And we have Nicole Washington and Sumit, who's on the board, helping about these changes. What we also thought was, instead of us being there, I think the biggest impact is in imparting this to the next generation. So we have 2 programs here focusing on high school kids and university kids to really go and help them understand what it is to build business plans and pitch ideas and successfully raise money. So the program called TYE, the Young Entrepreneur, really helps in running these free boot camps and making sure that the whole ecosystem of high school kids get ready when they are going to college, and when they graduate from college, set up their own startups. And this year in 2021, I'm proud to say that headed by Dr. Joshi and Sumit Luthra, we revamped the whole program to the extent where the results are immediate. Our team from DC, called Asteria, high school kids, came first in the global competitions, competing with 22 chapters globally, and that's a significant achievement that we have done. With that, what I wanted to do quickly, and I know we started a bit late, but introduce one concept here that really is unique, and that's what makes TIDC. We've heard a lot about startups. We've known that the failure rates are high, they need a lot of capital, but what's not talked about and what's not being really represented is what I call as the beltway startups. So let me explain what I mean by beltway startups. Beltway startups are technically any small business startups that service the federal government. Could be an 8A, could be a Hubzone, could be a veteran-owned, it could be a woman-owned. But the kind of impact that they create in the ecosystem of the US economy is big. They do have a lot of similarities like traditional startups, but they're also very different. And that's what we at TIDC understand very well. So let me explain what that means. The failure rates are high, absolutely. Startups fail, 90% of them fail 2-3 years out. But guess what? The beltway startups fail after 10 to 15 years. When you ask why, it's because of the 8A set aside, 8 on all the small business help that they get from SBA, but when they graduate out of these programs, a lot of people are caught off guard. They don't know how to gracefully navigate the valley of death. And that's when a lot of these companies taper, they go down, and we at TIDC have taken that as a big pillar to help these companies navigate through the valley of death and get to the other end. And we have many people on the board of TI, including Sumit Srivatsava and few others who have recently navigated and exited their companies on the other end. And so that's one. The second thing, what people don't realize is the beltway startups are very capital efficient. I'm sure most of you here have probably raised $0 in their life, but guess what? These are the companies that are profitable from month one. When I say month one, you do something, you're profitable 45 days later, because that's how efficient the beltway startups are. But not enough focus and effort is being put into this asset class, and we are trying to really make sure that the small businesses are able to not just focus on services, but using the cash that is being generated, build products, expand their product solutions, and be more agile in terms of taking on this whole thing. And that's where TIDC comes in to play and fill in this huge gap that is in this ecosystem. And you'll be watching this content. For most of you who missed it, I think a lot of content here about how innovation has come into the beltway. And today, we have a lot of content, and thanks to SBA and partners with them, they have the whole team here to come in and explain these small businesses in terms of how they can leverage mentor prodigy programs to navigate the valley of death by leveraging the capital from maybe even the mentors, taking help from other big companies to build their BD, build their capture, build accounting systems, build the processes to really succeed, and also make sure that at the end of the day, it's a win-win for everyone. So I wanted to, with that, quickly move on to introducing our keynote speaker, Mr. Antonio Das. Thanks for taking time to coming here. He's the Deputy Associate Administrator of SBA, and the resume is there on the website, but in short terms, he holds the key to probably 32% of the trillions of dollars that government ends up spending. That includes 8A, Hubzone, women-owned businesses. That's probably about 30%, right? So without further ado, Mr. Antonio Das, please welcome on the stage.
Sydney, thank you so much, too. Really appreciate it. Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Thanks for making it out on a beautiful, rainy Friday morning. The rain is a good thing just as much as the sunshine is. We need them both. I wanted to, just to acknowledge and thank Sudney and the team for putting together the program today. It's quite a program that, looking at your agenda from the days before and today, I feel like I'm sort of the warm-up act for the panel that's coming on next, because I know the quality of the folks who are involved in that particular panel and some of the other events that you have on the schedule. So it's great to be here. And what I wanted to do today was to really just kind of help give you some background on the Small Business Administration, our Government Contracting and Business Development Division, give you a little bit of update on what's happening within the federal contracting space in a broad sense, and then some of the initiatives, challenges, changes, and work that we've got going on. So I've got a PowerPoint that I'll kind of walk through just to kind of keep us on point here. So one of the things I wanted to do is just make sure we level set. There's a lot to the Small Business Administration, and depending on which ways you're engaged with it, you know, it's sort of like the elephant. You know it's got a trunk, or you may know it's got a tail, but you may not really know all of what it has. And the same is true for our Office of Government Contracting and Business Development. And so I wanted to just kind of give you an overview just to make sure you have a sense of the types of things we do and what our responsibilities are and how we're going about doing it. So I've got a number of, but not all of the roles and responsibilities we have, but I just wanted to kind of share with you some of the information here. So one of the things that we have is we have these things called PCRs and CMRs. And I don't know if people even know what PCRs and CMRs are. It's another one of those acronyms that we're really, really good at creating at the federal government level. PCRs are procurement center representatives, and CMRs are commercial market representatives. Why would you care about either of these? Well, your procurement center representatives, or PCRs, they're SBA employees who often sit in a federal agency other than SBA, and a lot of their work is around trying to identify which contract opportunities that are not currently being set aside for small business, but could and should be set aside for small business, and they work with the buying activities to help make sure that happens. And they're not just looking at small business, they'll look at 8A, they'll look at the Hubzone program, the Women-Owned Small Business Program, and service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. So they're focused on trying to do the right thing across our full spectrum. Our commercial market representatives, or CMRs, they're focused on a similar thing, but from a subcontracting perspective. So between the two of them, they're kind of like our secret agents that are working to try to make more opportunities happen for you, the small business owner, to the maximum extent practicable. That's what their focus is. Size determinations. Our Office of Policy and Planning Liaison is the place in the federal government that determines what business is small and which business is not small based on the various NAICS codes that exist in the federal government. And if you're a brand new startup business, the size standards are probably too high. These big companies seem to you to be too big to be in the small business category. But once you start growing and you get a lot of revenue, then all of a sudden, ooh, the size standard is kind of tight. Why can't it be bigger? And so that's a challenge that we're continually faced with, is trying to make sure we have the right spacing for what's considered to be a small business versus one that's not small. The surveillance reviews, it's a compliance effort that we do. Our procurement center representatives, a lot of times our business opportunity specialists join them from the district offices. We'll go to federal buying activities and basically see, are we doing in the federal agencies the work that we're supposed to be doing, the way we're supposed to do it, to ensure the rule of two is happening and that we're giving enough opportunities for small businesses to be awarded contracts. So that's a big part of our work. We do several certification programs. Our most recent, newest one is the Women-Owned Small Business Program. So now if you're a women-owned small business and you want to be certified, you have to go through the SBA. There's no cost to do it, but we do actually handle those certifications. We've been doing it for just a little more than a year. We started with a huge backlog because right away a lot of businesses wanted to get certified, and we really weren't resourced properly to handle the volume. But we're making improvements, and at this point we're seeing the number of days it takes to get certified down closer to about 31 days. So that's a nice encouraging thing for us, because early on we really had a lot more volume than we could handle. Similarly, we certified the 8A Business Development Program participants, as well as the Hubzone program. And then I want to also just point out the Mentor Protege program. Years ago, the Mentor Protege program was only available within SBA for firms that were in our 8A business development program. And then Congress, through the National Defense Authorization Act several years ago, opened that up to all businesses. So it didn't matter if you were 8A, you could be women-owned or veteran-owned. It didn't matter. You could become eligible for the Mentor Protege program. And just this past year, we've consolidated what was the 8A Mentor Protege program and the All Small Mentor Protege program into one. In fact, my colleague, Mr. Stanley Jones Jr. is here, and that's part of the area of his responsibility is managing our Mentor Protege program. So we're seeing a lot of great success where it's kind of getting to a little bit of what Sudhini was speaking to, the knowledge that firms have when they're in the 8A business development program or when they're in the small business size standards. Are they acquiring enough knowledge on how to manage, run, grow the business, deliver on the contracts, so that when they start getting higher and higher revenues, that they're still able to compete at the next level? And so part of the advantage of working through a Mentor Protege program is being able to be connected with a business who's further down that path than what that particular small business may be. And it's a great way to learn, partner, and expand your opportunities for growth. Certified.sba.gov is our certification system. It's how, if you're applying for any of our programs for certification that you come into, certified.sba.gov. I'll speak to a little bit more about that in a minute. And then lastly, goal setting. Every federal agency, all the 24 Act CFO agencies, work with SBA, our Office of Policy Planning and Liaison, to establish a goal. So we have that 23% goal, but we also have a 3% and a 5% goal for the subcategories. And so we establish individual goals. Not every agency, for example, has a 23% goal. Some are higher, some are lower, but collectively they get us to that 23% or better every year. So this is just a quick overview of a number of the different things that we have within our Office of Government Contracting and Business Development. So speaking of the goals, how have we been doing? So federal spending, it's really up. I mean, we've been kind of like lights out the past several years. And as you can see on the graphic here, this past year, at 23% goal, well, we had 26.02%. I remember what seemed like it was just a few years ago, we could not, no matter what we did, reach 23%. Well, now we've got 8 years consecutively of not only reaching the 23% goal, but exceeding it. And our dollar volume is being increased almost every year. We're seeing more and more dollars go to small business. I referenced some of the sub-goals before, and so just to give you a sense of where we are with the sub-goals. So the Hubzone program is one where we've never actually made our goal. We keep trying and we keep getting closer, but that 3% goal is still very elusive to us. This past year was the greatest amount that we've awarded in terms of Hubzone contracts, but still we didn't get to our 3% goal. Small disadvantaged business goal, it's only 5%. We're over 10% routinely now. So we're doing fantastic there, but that's probably our strongest performer out of the group. When you look at the service disabled veteran-owned small business, we are doing very well there. We're beating our 3% goal with 4.28. And the women-owned small business goal, we have made it twice, but we haven't developed the ability to stack wins in achieving that women-owned small business goal. But there's a lot of work going on in that regard. So what we're seeing is really good, strong results. Not everywhere we want to see it as well as we want to see it, but the dollars are going increasingly to small businesses. And so that's a good thing for us to be encouraged about. And so we should all be happy, and we should all be feeling very, very good. And there's yet another side to the story. With all that great success, what we're also seeing is that increasingly we're spending more and more of our federal dollar in procurement with a smaller number of businesses every year. So if you're in that smaller number of business, then you're really, really, really happy. If you're not, then you're not so happy. And we're not so happy as a federal government because we're seeing a decline. We're seeing significant declines in the number of businesses who are getting awards for federal contracts. We're seeing significant declines in the number of new entrants who are getting awards for contracts. And it's not healthy for our economy to have too much of our contracts going to too few businesses. I'm always really, really big on diversification. I learned some lessons on diversification years ago that have stayed with me throughout so much of my career. And when we look at what's happening with our federal spend, we can't sustain what we're trying to do in the long term. At some point, if we keep giving to just a few small businesses every year, then those small businesses will no longer be small businesses. And the bench strength behind them will be weaker because they haven't had the opportunity to really participate in the way that we would want them to participate. So these are real challenges, and I can tell you that the federal government en masse is keenly aware of these challenges and keenly focused on developing some solutions around procurement reform that will allow us to do better in terms of expanding the number of businesses that are participating in the federal marketplace, as well as getting more contracts to those businesses. The other point that's up on the slide, I just want to make sure I highlight as well, I speak of lack of diversity, diversification. You know, there's a lot of congressional districts. There's one for every member of Congress. But 50%, excuse me, I'm going to say the wrong number. 50% of our small business dollars go to just 35 congressional districts. So that's a lot of concentration. Again, if you're in a congressional district here in Northern Virginia, that's probably a pretty good thing. But if you're in some other parts of the country, our federal dollars haven't made it there as much. And you know, we want to make sure that we're helping the economies throughout the United States and not simply just those that are closer to the Beltway area. So those are some of the work items that we're focused on in terms of trying to correct that slide that we have been seeing. And we want to see more businesses participating. We need it from an innovation perspective. We need it from a diversity of supplier options, from a pricing point of view. And really, federal contracting is a great way, and it really kind of hits back to the capture here on the vision statement. It's about trying to help create more wealth for business owners to help expand the middle class. You know, our middle class is driven in a lot of cases by what we see happening through things like the federal contracting. So we want to make sure that we're strengthening the middle class. So last part I want to just share with you for the next couple minutes are just some of the developments and changes that we have either underway or recently taken in our federal government agency, the Small Business Administration, and particularly our Office of Government Contracting and Business Development. So the Hubzone Business Development, or the Hubzone program, as I mentioned earlier, is one where we've struggled to make our contracting goal. But it has not been without tremendous efforts by the team who have done a lot of good things to try to create some simplicity within the Hubzone program, to ease some of the concern that some of the contracting officials have around, if I'm getting ready to make an award to this Hubzone small business, is it likely to be protested? And you know, none of us wants to do work twice. So if we got to the point where we make an award, we want that award to happen. We don't want to have to get stuck in a protest process. So one of the things we've done there is just really simplifying the certification process so that now it's an annual approach that we use as opposed to looking at it almost every time you get a contract. So we think that's one of the things that's helping. We've done a number of flexibility measures related to the COVID environment to, again, try to recognize that we have to be flexible and innovative to ensure that we're getting the opportunities for Hubzone firms to participate and grow. I mentioned earlier about the Mentor Protege program being consolidated. And again, Mr. Stanley Jones Jr. is here, so if you have more questions in particular about the Mentor Protege program, I know he and his team will be sharing more information on that, and you'll get more there. A manufacturing office. We're establishing a manufacturing office. Actually, President Biden announced it in Pennsylvania, not quite Trenton, but nearby. And we've never had a manufacturing office at SBA. Our offices are generally about program, not industry. But in this case, what we're really doing is we're saying manufacturing is a critical issue. Unless you've just missed everything about the supply chain challenges lately and what happened during COVID, you know that we're in a position where we need to be able to have more manufacturing capabilities within the U.S. So we are developing and building out a manufacturing office within our Office of Government Contracting and Business Development to improve our advocacy, support, resources, and tools to help manufacturers start and grow. We'd love to see way more manufacturers here being able to deliver the products that we need to run the needs of the country without always being so reliant on our foreign partners to get those things. Size standards, I mentioned earlier that the larger you get, the more uncomfortable you get with the ceiling of the size standard. So we're reviewing all of our size standards again this year. We do anticipate increasing the size standards on a number of the different NAICS codes. And so that'll be something that'll be coming out during fiscal year 22. We're in fiscal year 22 in case you weren't thinking about the federal fiscal year, but more likely calendar year 22 is when those announcements will come forward. The 7J program, actually another program Mr. Stanley Jones Jr. oversees, and that is a program, again, focused on strengthening the business acumen, the smarts of a business owner, so that they can effectively grow and compete in the federal marketplace to get access to contracts, and to build a company that has the capacity to withstand market changes and progress to whatever the desired level of business status and size that they want to do. These are free programs, and it's a great way to get more education to the business owner and make sure that you're leading and running your company as best you possibly can. We are also constantly looking at our certification process. The 8A program is probably one, if anybody's been certified in the 8A program, you probably know it was less than the easiest thing that you've ever done. And so we are working to make it a better customer experience for all of our programs to see how we can quicken the pace while still being diligent to the responsibility that we have to not just let everybody in the program, making sure the proper persons and business owners are admitted to the program. So that's a big item on our plate this year. And next year, as in fiscal year 2023, we will be acquiring the Veterans Administration's Center for Verification and Evaluation, or CVE program. That is a rather large undertaking for SBA. The Veterans Administration has been doing a fantastic job of administering the CVE certification program. We're going to pick it up. It was part of the deal that was passed in the National Defense Authorization Act earlier this year in January. And that stipulates that January 2023, we take over that program. Now, we know there's somewhere around 25,000 self-certified veteran-owned businesses that will need to get certified if they really want to participate in the federal marketplace. So we're working extremely closely with the Veterans Administration in the transition process to make sure that that is a smooth transition. We want it to be something that works in a way, hopefully, that the people who are used to working with the VA aren't be able to tell much of a difference that they're now working with SBA. That's our objective, but we got a lot of work to do in the meantime to get there, including the fact that we don't have enough funding for it. But that tends to be something that happens, unfortunately, a little bit more often than we would prefer. And then the last thing on the list here is the goal increase. I mentioned that we were doing extremely well with the small disadvantaged business goal. Again, President Biden in Tulsa earlier this year, Tulsa, Oklahoma, said that he wants to improve our small disadvantaged business goal up to 15%. So it's only at 5% now, but moving it to 15% by 2025. And that's a very significant thing because it's going to create that much more energy and focus, not only within SBA, but within all of our federal agency partners to drive more opportunities for small disadvantaged businesses to be able to participate in the federal marketplace to get more contracts and hopefully to help those companies get revenue, create jobs, to help create the wealth that we spoke about earlier, and to be able to position their companies for what I like to consider to be strong, long-term, sustainable existence, because we need those companies to be able to do that for their local markets and for the support of the federal space too. So I'll wrap it up with that comment, and if there are questions that I might be able to try to answer, I'll be happy to. I even see one hand already.
Good morning, Mr. Das. Oh, okay. People usually say I don't need a mic.
They normally tell me I do need like 2 mics. So.
Is this working? Oh, great.
Yes.
Hi. Well, it's great to see you again, Mr. Das. I don't know if you recognize my face.
I do.
I think you do. My name is Devin Hewitt. I'm a senior partner at Vertori Law. I know Stanley does. He looked in great fear when he saw me walk in. So I won't ask my JV questions quite yet, but I do want to ask a couple of general questions. You brought up an issue on funding. My first question is, we were talking about businesses and growth. I have seen and seen some challenges for my clients about growth and the size standards keeping up, and the growth and the size standards keeping up. I know that you said some more are going to come out next year. I know that there is a mandate for them to roll up every, I think, 18 months or something like that. Is SBA keeping on that schedule?
Oh, yeah.
They are?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, we definitely are. It's actually every 5 years we're supposed to go through the whole size standard revisit. And there's the size standards, I've been sort of on the sidelines watching this over a number of years. I'm now 20 years in the agency, so certain things kind of stand out, and size standards is almost always a lose-lose proposition.
Right.
No matter what number we established, there's always a component of the market that says it's the wrong level. And but our team is really diligent, and we're trying to make sure that the dominant players in the industry are not in the small business size standard. And we're trying to make sure that those who need to have the opportunity to compete amongst a like size group are there in that group as well. And then on top of it, we've got the whole issue of some refer to them as mid-tier companies.
I was going to say, is there any movement within SBA to addressing that in a regulatory or programmatic fashion?
Yeah, mid-tier is, it's a paradox, the way I look at it. So mid-tier companies, for those of you who may not be thinking the same terminology, I'll just make sure we're all saying the same thing. It's companies who have outgrown the small business size standard. Maybe your size standard is 30 million, and these companies may be 40 or 50 million in revenue, which is a big company, except if you're going up against a $2 billion company. Then you're not so big at all, you're still little. And so those companies are faced with an unusual challenge. They're too large to compete against the smalls, and not always fully equipped to compete against the large. For SBA, our mandate is we're here to help small business. And part of the paradox is I always look at those companies that have outgrown the size standard as really some of our biggest successes.
Until they fail.
Yeah, it's kind of like, your kid was valedictorian in high school and goes off to college, and next thing you know, they're dropping out. And it's like, well, how did that happen? And it doesn't feel right. But it's a challenge for us because addressing the mid-tier space is really outside of SBA's domain to do so.
I understand. My bigger question, I know there's no easy answer, and all agencies fail in this regard, and it's hard to address. My biggest struggle in dealing with small business issues, and 90% of my clients are small businesses, and from somebody in his garage to companies that ultimately sell for $400 million. Obviously, issues come up that involve SBA, and sometimes, we're on the same side as SBA. On the front lines, when you're dealing with a business opportunity specialist, I get numerous calls from clients who say, well, my business opportunity specialist says this, or the regulations say I have to give a form to this. A lot of times, the advice or the instructions they get are incorrect. And I will say, we'll go back and say, this is what's required, or no, you are compliant between X, Y, and Z. But the person is insistent that they are correct. And it puts me in a very difficult position. And because I've been around, as you know, for a very long time, and because several of you have been very kind to answer phone calls and you know, give me some time, I'm able to try to assist them. But I know there's not enough funding, and I know there's not enough training, and government across the board often do not pick up phone calls, and certainly not from attorneys. And it's, you know, it just creates more work and frustration between industry and government. And, you know, I sit there and I think there's got to be a better way. You know, they're just creating, you know, bad decisions upon bad decisions upon bad decisions, and more money for small businesses to spend correcting mistakes that are not intentional. But it's so much time where I say, well, tell the business opportunity to call John Klein, or I have to call John. John, call the office. And I mean, I don't know what can be done about that, but if there's more industry, you know, interaction, I mean, I think that needs to be addressed for more success to happen in the future.
Yeah, you know, appreciate the point. There's a lot that takes place within, so the business opportunity specialists, for those who are trying to piece this together, are employees of SBA who work in our district offices, and principally they've got a responsibility for the 8A business development programs in their portfolios. So we do a regular, literally a monthly business opportunity specialist training call, and a lot of times that's a place where we're able to pinpoint deficiencies or opportunities to improve knowledge. Just like any other organization, we have new people who come in, we have people who are relatively new in those roles. And sometimes the program can be fairly complicated. There's a lot of rules, and between the Code of Federal Regulations, or the CFR, and the FAR rules, they sometimes require, you know, a little bit of a review between both of them, because they don't always completely align. And so business opportunity specialists are faced with that challenge. And this past year, really this past 2 years almost at this point, I mean, they literally have been slammed with all kind of challenges. With the COVID environment was, I worked in the district office. Up until last May, I was in a district office here in DC, and I just know the volume of calls, the challenges that were before them, dealing with businesses that were just struggling to get their PPP loans or whatever else it might have been. It's been a lot on my teammates, and I know they're doing what they can do to make sure they're getting the best decisions, and they care about trying to make sure that happens right. So we continually try to work to train, inform, and make sure everyone has the tools and the resources that they need.
We'll probably take one last question, very brief one, so we can get to more. And by the way, the SBA team is here pretty much the whole day, so feel free to get an appointment, and they're going to be available through at least 3 o'clock.
Hi, good morning. This is Sue with Systems Integration. I saw in one of your slides that there's been a decline in small business contract awards. I was wondering if you could share what some of the top reasons are, and if there's anything that the government is doing to kind of reverse that trend.
Yeah, it's been a consistent decline over really a number of years. So, you know, federal government contracting is not the most simplistic opportunity. You know, there's a lot of challenges in developing your business strategy and getting connected in the space, and not everybody warms to that and decides to go in that direction, for one thing. The other is we've had competing priorities. So one of those competing priorities deals with something called category management, which is another goaling approach to try to make sure we're spending the federal dollar as efficiently as we can and helping to save essentially money for the government, and so that we're spending the taxpayers' dollar better. Sometimes the goals of category management and the goals of SBA's procurement team are not necessarily in alignment, and it's probably caused or contributed to some of our buying activity personnel making a decision to satisfy a category management goal at the sacrifice of a small business goal. And so that's one of the elements that we're looking at is are there ways to address the two of those approaches to ensure that we're getting as many opportunities for small businesses to get contracts. But I appreciate the question.
All right. With that, I wanted to take a moment to thank Antonia Dawes for
Sydney,
making
thank
it
you
here.
so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Small token of appreciation.
Oh, thank you so much, Stu. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.